Hello, today I'm here with the reading of Walt Whitman's Oh Captain, My Captain. After reading the poem and explaining its difficult parts or adding up to the analysis of the poem, I will move on to explain what is pattern poetry or concrete poetry or shape poems. So stay with me till the end of the video. First of all, about the background of the poem. The poem is written on the occasion of the assassination of the American President Abraham Lincoln, just after the Civil War. Lincoln was the president of the United States. When the Civil War started, and they fought against the Confederate forces or the states, and finally Lincoln won, or his army and troops won, and he was part of the victor actually side of the war. Anyway, his enemies were so angry that one of them assassinated him while he was in a theater house watching a performance. Anyway, Walt Whitman was so desperate when this happened because he, ever after knowing Lincoln, admired him as a leader, as a person known with his perseverance and power, and this kind of damaged Waltman's emotions. He wrote, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," in a specific shape. As you can see, he's the captain. Lincoln is allegorically the captain of a ship, and then each stanza of the poem shows this ship kind of shape, but it's because symbolically a ship can be considered as a symbol of a nation, and then he's the captain or the leader, Lincoln. Whitman is famous for his free verse. He's famous for his new prosodic technicalities and uh, kind of playing with the idea of sonority of the poem by using short and long lines, for example, or adding up and introducing new cadences into American poetry. But anyway, he has written this poem, this elegy, actually, in form of a metrical poem, following also some specific rhyme scheme. Also, I mentioned the word elegy. The poem is an elegy. It means that it's written on the occasion of someone's death, and it is kind of, generally speaking, as a genre, lamenting the death of someone dear, maybe personally and privately to the poet, or sometimes to a nation. And the poet themselves here become the voice of the nation, rather admiring the poet, the a captain or Lincoln in a private way. So let's move on to the text of the poem. Oh, Captain, my Captain. By the way, before reading it, many of you have, of course, listened to Robin Williams rehearsing and reciting this part of the poem in that famous movie, The Dead Poets Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship was weathered every rack. It means that every difficulty is now passed by the ship, by the nation. The prize we sought is won. The prize is actually winning over the Confederate forces in the Civil War. The party's near, the bells are here, the people all exulting, the people are happy and exciting, while follow eyes the steady the keel of the ship. The keel is steady, so the ship, the keel here actually represents the whole synecdochical here. The ship is a steady one, established one, the nation he means. The vessel grim and daring. Grim here means mysterious, grim and daring, but oh, heart, heart, heart. Oh, the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen, cold, and that. So the news is here that the captain of this ship, which is now the Vector Von, is dead. And let's see the reaction of the poet in the next stanza. Oh, captain, my captain, rise up and hear the bells. Now he's denying the death of that dear one. Oh, Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells rise up. For you the flag is flung, for you the beagle trills, for you bouquets and ribboned wreaths, for you the shores are crowding, for you they call, the swaying mass, their eager faces turning. So he still wishes for the dead body to become alive. Here, Captain, dear father, and he moves even further. Instead of calling Lincoln just the captain, he calls him the father of the nation. This arm beneath your head, it is some dream that on the deck you have fallen cold and dead. While the news of the death of Lincoln was acknowledged in the first stanza, in the second one the poet is in a state of denial. So we are actually his man and just looking at his representation of the management of grief. At first he says, okay, he's dead. He starts to deny, and of course the last stage is to be acceptance, which comes in the last part of the poem. My captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still. Now that he's asking him to say something, to do something, when the chorus does not move, he's going to accept. My captain does not answer. His lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm. He has no pulse nor will. By calling him a captain and a father, he established a kind of twisted relationship, both on a personal scale and on a national one. The ship is anchored safe and sound, its voyage closed and done. From fearful trip the victor ship comes in, with object won. Exult, O shores, and wrangle bells, because anyway we have won. But I with mournful tread walk the deck, my captain lies fallen, cold and dead. While the people are happy for the victory in the war, he prefers to be grieved by the death of Lincoln. He actually wants to follow his own emotions, his personal emotions, and sees a distance or a gap between his feelings at the moment and the feelings of the nation. And this way, the poem ends. Let's move on to the notion or the technical definition of concrete poetry. Concrete poetry means not a poem which is concrete in its meaning. Actually, it's a technical term. Its old name, which can be considered more telling, is as actually pattern poem. The poem follows typographically a pattern on the page. Its other name is also shape verse, which is helping us to understand the meaning of it. And so the form of the poem, as it is typed on the paper, is related to its content and intensifies and empowers the poem's meaning. Its first feature is that it experiments with visual shape as the text is presented on the page, and also it's printed in such a way that its shape itself grabs the reader's attention, and the poem turns into concrete or physical object. That's why we call it a concrete poem, because it has a shape on the page. And there is an interrelationship between this shape and the meaning the poem tries to convey to the audience. We can just read some examples. The first example, it may be one of the earliest examples in English poetry, is Easter Wings by George Herbert. George Herbert, the religious metaphysical poet, has written this poem on Easter, and the two parts of the poem represent the wings of a bird. Lord, who created man and wealth in store, though foolishly he lost the same, decaying more and more, till he became most poor. You see, when we talk about God's wealth in store, the line is longer. And when we talk of man's foolishness, the lungs are getting shorter and shorter, and then decaying, and also the poem is decaying more and more till he became most poor. Poor, and just does you cannot You can read it as poor as PWOR in modern day English. As here, the spellings are related to the time the poet has written this poem. But and then when we are with God again, we can arise like what Jesus Christ did on Easter. With thee, oh, let me rise as larks harmoniously and sing this day in thy victories. So when we have the talk of God again, then shall the fall further, the flight in me. Besides the alliteration of fall further and the flight in this line, he's talking of a belief at the time that when God loves someone, he will give him some difficulties. And then if we fall, actually we are closer to God. The flight is nearer. And then he follows the same pattern in the second stanza. My tender age in sorrow did begin, and still with sickness and shame, thou didst to punish sin. And we are back to the story of creation and then the rising again. That I became most sin. Like most poor here, most sin also is a short line. And then we have with thee and rising. Let me combine and fill thy victory. For if I amp my wing in thine, affliction shall advance the flight in me. When affliction is good, when it is actually related to God, when it is entangled with the affairs of God and religion. So this was an example, or oh, we can have the example of a Christmas tree. Oh, let me just stop it. As you can see, this poem, which is about a Christmas tree, and it is actually spoken by a tree, is written in form of a tree. I am a tree, a Christmas tree. How merry do I feel to think to what I used to be? And it continues in the same vein. Or we can have A Throw of Dice by Mallarmé, the French poet. The poem follows the pattern of the movement of a dice when it is thrown, and it is about nothingness and chance and happenings like in the life. So as life doesn't follow and let's say regular pattern, uh, the poem doesn't follow one. So the poem shows the absurdity of life and its dependence on chance, nothingness of the memorable crisis, or might the event have been accomplished in view of all resource null, human will have taken place, an ordinary elevation pours out absence, but the place, some splashing below of water as if to disperse the empty act, abruptly, which is otherwise by its falsehood would have founded perdition in these latitudes of indeterminate waves in which all reality dissolves. And it is how the form is contributing or reinforcing contributing to and reinforcing the meaning or the content of the poem, or we can, I'm sorry, Il Pluie, or It Rains by Guillaume Apollinaire, the avant-garde modernist French poet. The poem is written originally in this form, and it is about rain and the feelings it will bring upon. While the shape is also like rain, it's translated as such. It's raining women's voices as if they had died even in memory, and it's raining you as well. Marvelous encounters of my life, oh little drops, those rearing clouds begin to neigh, a whole universe of auricular cities. Listen, as you see, the sound of the rain is also included in the meaning. Listen, if it rains by regret and disdain, weep in the ancient music. Listen to the bands far off, which hold you above and below. The interesting thing is that we have kinesthetic imagery like above and below, the movement of the raindrops, and also we have auditory imagery here, as the poet is asking us to listen to the sound of the rain, while visually speaking, the poem is also shaped and formed like raining. Or we can have the famous example of this one by Cummings, R P O P H E S A G R. The poem is written like this. It's like a riddle. It's actually not that much readable. Who, as we look on up now, guess, and then something Errington. The poem is not readable. Actually, it's not readable because when we look at a grasshopper, we cannot have a clear image as the insect is always moving, and the blurry image is now translated into the form of a poem. The poem can be read in this way, and also it has a grasshopper inside it. So this hidden point is also interesting. Who, as we look up now, yes, and then into it as its the EEP, its shape is constantly changing, and now we can read it in a more readable version of it. Who, as we look up now, gathering into there's something, leaves arriving again to become rearrangingly a grasshopper, or it can be decoded grasshopper, who, as we look up now, gathering into leaves, arriving to become arrangingly grasshopper. So this was my explanation of Oh Captain, My Captain by Walt Whitman, and also the genre of the poem, which is an elegy, and also the form of a poem, which is pattern or shape verse. Thank you very much for listening.